The importance of the River Nile in ancient Egypt, 3100 through 30 BC. The River Nile was life in ancient Egypt, providing a fundamental source of water and fertile silt, while simultaneously offering protection and spiritual strength. Ancient Egyptians monitored the Nile and regulated their daily and annual activities based on its waters. The Nile River, which extends for more than 4,100 miles northward through the African continent, is the world's longest river. The Nile River Delta, an area that extends for roughly 100 miles, served as a strategic port and hub of life in ancient Egypt. Within the delta itself, the Nile splits to form the Rosetta Branch and the Damietta Branch, which run west and east respectively. From as early as 8,000 to 6,000 BC, people began permanently settling in the Nile Valley. The regularity of the Nile's floods often brought nutrient-rich silt to areas along the river's banks, a valuable resource farmers used to grow grains like wheat and barley. This dynamic made Egypt one of the most fertile regions in the ancient world. By roughly 3,500 BC, Egyptians began tracking the Nile using nilometers. Initially, nilometers were read on columns placed in the river to mark water levels, and priests would keep records. Later on, designs included stairs descending into the river itself. Similarly, observers noted the cycles of the Nile. The year was divided according to those cycles, with 3 distinct seasons. During Akhet, or inundation, the Nile flooded. Following this first season, the Peret, or growing season, then took place as the land emerged from the flood. Once the crops were ready, the Egyptians harvested during Shemu, the 3rd season in the ancient Egyptian calendar, when the water was short and the crops were harvested. Farming techniques in ancient Egypt involved manual labor, with the use of some draft animals to plow the land. Wheat was separated by winnowing, using a wooden scoop which was thrown in the air so the chaff was blown away, leaving the heavy seeds in the ground. Grain was used to make bread, porridge, and beer, all foodstuffs fundamental to sustaining life. Farmers also grew cotton, beans, flax, and papyrus. Egyptians began to irrigate with the waters from the Nile, extending the amount of land that could be used for agricultural production. By 3100 BC, canals and dams emerged to channel water throughout the valley. The development of shadufs, a system of ropes, beams, and buckets to retrieve water from the Nile, allowed people to move water from one channel to another, or to transport water to fields further out. From shadufs appearing from around 1700 BC to water wheels a millennia later, irrigation continued to expand throughout the Nile Valley. With greater understanding of the Nile came more informed and better coordinated trade practices. The Nile served as the primary transportation route through the region. Egyptians traded amongst themselves, with interaction between the upper and lower regions of Egypt long before unification in roughly 3150 BC. They also traded with Nubians to the south and were able to interact with various other societies by using the Nile. Because Egypt had plentiful supplies of grain, it was able to obtain wood, metal, and luxury items through exchange with Nubians to the south and contemporaries in locations like Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome. Because the Nile was so important to life, agriculture, and production, Egyptians connected spirituality to its waters. A famine or less than fruitful harvest was associated with unhappy gods, their wrath, and a need to appease them. The most closely connected myth with the Nile was that of Osiris, Set, and Isis. Osiris was murdered by his brother, Set, because the latter was jealous of the former's power. By tricking Osiris into a coffin that he then threw into the Nile, Set killed his brother. Osiris's wife, Isis, undertook a search for her husband's body. She found him and left her sister Nephthys to guard the body from Set. Set inevitably found the body, cut it into pieces, and distributed those parts throughout Egypt. Isis and Nephthys went to find all of the pieces and were able to locate everything but Osiris's genitals, which Set had thrown into the Nile. It was eaten by the Oxyrhynchus fish, and was therefore forbidden to eat that type of fish in ancient Egypt. Another god was Hapi, who was the personification of the Nile River, symbolizing water and fertility. He was seen as the god who controlled the annual flooding of the Nile River and was worshipped by everyone in Egypt. Because the pharaohs were seen as gods in mortal form, they were also tied closely to the activities of the Nile. It is said that when the pharaoh Djoser experienced a famine during his reign, he was visited by the god Khnum in a dream. Khnum, connected to rebirth and creation, instructed Djoser to fix his temple in order to end the famine, which Djoser did. As a result, Egypt returned to a state of fertility, and Djoser was heralded as a great king. Egyptians enjoyed protection thanks to the Nile. The Egyptian kingdoms raised many mud brick forts along the Nile that enhanced the defensive capabilities of the kingdom against its southern neighbor, Nubia. Hostilities with Nubia to the south were also mitigated by cataracts, or shallow areas with rapid water, stones, and inlets that prohibited easy movement. As a thriving civilization, Egypt developed within a limited area around the Nile, protected by dry desert all around it. The arid land served as a deterrent to potential invaders and raiders. The Nile was also a source of recreation and fun. Swimming and games in the Nile were common, as were boat races and riding the rapids. Fishing in the Nile could be an activity to obtain food, or part of a day relaxing near the river. Egyptians would fish with spears, nets, and baskets made out of papyrus. The Nile River was not without any dangers, however, as many wild animals lurked in its waters. Crocodiles and hippopotamuses were the scourge of the waters, wreaking havoc and devastation. As the father of life and the mother of all men, the Nile was intertwined with aspects of life in ancient Egypt. The first-century Roman author Seneca the Younger described the Nile as unique and exceptional. The power and importance of its waters has been recognized since ancient times, and the status of the Nile as an Egyptian lifeline was realized, welcomed, and praised.